Hey everyone, this is Carlos Corral, the artistic director for the El Paso Film Festival. As you know, we've announced that we will be going digital this coming fall, so be sure to check us out on Roku TV, Fire TV, and Apple TV. But what we want to do here is offer a platform for filmmakers. So with me today is the very Lucky McKee. He actually had a film with us last year called Kindred Spirits, but he's taken time out of his busy writing schedule to chat with us to give filmmakers some advice. So, Lucky, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So I'll kind of keep it quick, because I know filmmakers are kind of in need of guidance. I mean, I as a filmmaker need a little bit of guidance, especially during these turbulent times, so to speak. But I kind of wanted to go back to the beginning. So I went to film school. I graduated from University of Texas at Austin, and I believe you went to USC, correct?
I did. Yeah, I went to the film school at USC. I was an undergraduate in the screenwriting program there.
What would you say, do you think film school is important or not important? Because I also know that that's actually where you wrote your first feature screenplay, which became May in 2002.
Yeah. I mean, there's pros and cons to anything. I mean, I think that, if you don't have the means to go to college or the grades or if you have something standing in your way, you can still figure out how to make movies. What I liked about college was it gave me 4 years to experiment, to find my voice, to meet other people from around the world that were interested in the same thing, because I grew up in a very isolated environment in the country, and I had one friend that was interested in movies and nobody else was really into what we were doing, so it was very lonely. So going to college and all of a sudden you're thrust into this environment of a bunch of people that are interested in the same thing. You're learning from each other's mistakes, and you're learning from each other's discoveries, and that group sort of learning process was crucial for me, and the even more so than the classes themselves or anything were the friends I made, at school and learned how to make movies with together, so that was all really good. But I think now more than ever, if college isn't an option for somebody, there's tremendous resources. There's just the access to films in general and writing about film with in the computer age is kind of staggering. I know there was a lot of movies that I was always trying to track down when I was growing up, and there was just no access to that stuff. It was basically what was at the local video store, and that's it.
It's funny you mentioned that, because even when I went to film school, some of the best relationships I've ever made have been friends from film school. So
well, I mean, I work with Jack Ketchum, who's another El Paso native, who's largely the reason that I moved to El Paso, because every time I make a movie, it ends up being several months working with Zach, and over the course of doing a few movies, we got closer and closer as friends. His wife and my wife got really close as friends as well. And it just made sense for us to be together. But Zach was somebody I met at USC, and another friend of ours, Justin Stone, who just acted in a short film for us. And a ton of the people that I went to school with are still, I'm working with another old friend from school right now on this thing I'm writing. It just keeps paying off,
No, yeah. And that's great. So, film school, start to think about it, filmmakers. I don't know how learning will be.
And if you want like primers and stuff like that, I still, am trying to learn as much as I can all the time. The learning process never stops. I mean, a friend gifted me a subscription to this masterclass app, and of the ones I've watched so far, I would point any young filmmaker to Jodie Foster's class on directing. It's such a great starter, and just about the mentality of collaboration and all that kind of stuff. So again, there's tons of great resources out there, YouTube's a great resource. I didn't have YouTube when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Just be able to look up interviews with directors you like, and then if that director you like is talking about another director, then you seek out that person, and it all kind of grows from there,
Yeah, no, totally. Coming back to last year's film festival, so you
Yeah.
directed Kindred Spirits, so you got to work with Sasha Favola, I hope I'm saying that right, Caitlin Stasey and Thora Birch, and
Sasha Furlova,
Sasha
Caitlin
Favola, yeah,
Stasey, and
Stacy,
Thora
there you go.
Birch. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I want to make sure I said those right.
That's all good.
But I wanted to ask you about that. So, because you've mostly been known as a writer director, but in this case, for this movie, you were hired to direct it. How does your creativity adapt when you're directing someone else's work? And I mean, I've done that too, but I noticed that my
Yeah.
thinking changes. So, how
I've
does that
I've I've
change?
directed, scripts that started with other people and things written by other people to a certain extent before that. But I always ended up rewriting the script myself, even if I didn't take credit for it. I would usually do at least a pass or two over the script before I started to shoot, just to kind of personalize it. But with Kindred Spirits, it was a special circumstance. I mean, it goes back to my one of my oldest film school buddies, Chris Sievertson, wrote the script, and we had Chris and I have collaborated on a lot of things over the years. So I get his writing in a different way than a lot of directors would. I can see a lot more in it just because I know Chris so well. So that made it really easy for me. There was something really cool and relaxing about making Kindred Spirits and not having the script be like a major concern. I felt like Chris had written a really good script, and it was my job to transpose that to film in my way, the best way possible. But I never laid a hand on the keyboard screenplay wise, and there was something kind of freeing about that. I wasn't as precious about anything because I hadn't written it myself, so and I could just solely concentrate on directing, which was actually really fun. I'd like to do it again.
No, that's great. And
Yeah.
actually, aside from being a successful director, I know you're also an established producer.
Yeah.
You actually produced the film "The Man Who Killed
Not my
Hitler."
not my favorite of the three jobs we've talked about. Producing is hard. It's really, really hard.
No, yeah,
So,
but I kind of feel, because you did produce "The Man Who Killed Hitler" and then Bigfoot, which starred Sam
yeah.
Elliott.
Yeah.
But I, as someone who does producing and also directs, I kind of feel that is something that is helpful to a filmmaker's creativity because it helps you think creatively when you may not have the budget, or sometimes you need to think creatively to solve a problem.
And
So how
yeah,
does
it also gives you a great insight into the responsibility of making a film. What you're responsible for, and what you're responsible to. It shows uh, how difficult it is to raise money, because filmmaking is a very, very speculative thing. You're rolling the dice when you invest in a film. So you have to have a lot of confidence in the artists that you're building around it, and you have to nurture the talent without placating them or babying them. You have to it, for me as a director, it's taught me a lot about being pragmatic and being responsible. Being
Yeah,
responsible for
and of course, speaking to that responsibility, I kind of feel like when directors have that balance of being a good writer, directing, but also producing, I feel like that's when they really come up with something special. And so,
Yeah, and in film school, unless that's something that you want to specialize in, there's a lot of master classes in producing and stuff like that. But even USC, which is one of the biggest, most respected film schools in the world, there wasn't a lot of stuff about the business aspect of things. There wasn't a lot of stuff about the the nuts and bolts aspects of putting a film together. It was more about the artistic side and the creative side, which is all well and good, but film is a commercial art. You're making a product that you hope where you're trying to transpose your ideas to an audience, and you want as many people to see that as possible. So you have to keep that in mind and be respectful of it, and still do your thing, obviously. But,
oh no, totally. And I kind of feel like when you have the right balance, I think that's when something special is truly born. Like, so I want to talk about your, I believe it was 2009. You had The Woman premiere at Sundance, correct?
2011.
2011.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
2011 is when you premiered The Woman, and I feel like that one was something really special that you come with, which I
Yeah.
believe you wrote, directed, and produced,
Yeah,
correct?
I wrote the script and the novel with Jack Ketchum, because it was the movie was based on a previous couple of books that he had written, but it was a new idea that I brought to the table, and Ketchum and I wrote the thing together, and then I directed it. And I wasn't, I wasn't the producer on it, but when you're an independent filmmaker, you end up doing a lot of producer-esque tasks. Um,
Well, you did end up executive producing the sequel, which was Darlin, which Pollyanna
right.
McIntosh directed.
Right. But yeah, the woman was extremely special, and Sundance was wild.
Oh
It
yeah,
was
no,
wild. We got some really, really wild reactions from people, especially one gentleman who kind of lit fire on YouTube for damning me to hell for making the film.
which is funny.
In,
Yeah,
in
so
retrospect, is kind of amazing, but at the time, it was definitely gut churning because I was so nervous about showing the film. Anyway, it was the first time we'd ever shown the film to anybody outside our creative circle, so there's a lot of nerves that go with that. And then to have that violent of a reaction from somebody was it was like being in hell for a minute. But,
no, it's great. So yeah, if anyone wants to see this video, just Google the woman reaction at
yeah,
Sundance, and it'll come
yeah,
up.
yeah. Oh man, yeah. The guy, we broke that guy's brain.
Well, and actually, speaking of which, because there was something else that you mentioned, because while I was looking up a few things, I also ran into Adam Green's Sleepover series
Scary
on YouTube,
sleepover.
The Scary
Yeah,
Sleepover.
yeah.
But there was something you said there that kind of interested me. So I remember you told him that when you first directed May, you wrote, directed it, and that was a film you were really proud of for a while. And then after a while, it was like, I don't know about this movie. Does The Woman feel that same way? Like, are you still proud of it, 9, 10 years later?
I'm still proud of both of those films. I think the reason May or The Woman, your work starts to change on you as you grow older, and you get further and further away from being in the middle of creating it. Both films have a lot of extremely personal aspects to them that are very specific to me and that nobody needs to know about. But there's a lot of me in those stories, and that's hard to go back and look at, especially if you've evolved, if you've made every effort to evolve past that way of thinking, or or compartmentalize the bad things that have happened to you in your life, or the bad things that you've observed in life. Going back and watching a film is almost like time traveling back to that headspace, and sometimes it's very, very uncomfortable. May is very much about being extremely lonely and feeling kind of outcast and not really a part of the herd. So there's a lot of angst and a lot of those feelings were poured into that, and by making the film, it actually repaired a lot of those personal issues that I had, but again, you go back and watch it later, you feel like you've exposed yourself to people in a way that, like I said, they'll never really know why you feel that way. But you feel it.
No, yeah. The reason I asked that is, of course, you just re-released The Woman, the
Yeah.
4K special edition.
Yeah.
So yeah, what was it like going back to that? Putting it back in the edit room, resizing it, recoloring it,
Well,
upscaling it.
yeah, we remastered it and remastered it in 4K, and put a ton of extra features together. And one aspect of those extra features were a bunch of behind the scenes video that was just like fly on the wall, like handy cam footage that my dad shot every day of shooting. So that footage, even more so when I watched that stuff and we were going through that stuff in order to like cut it down to create something that was like 70 or 80 minutes long from about 15 hours of footage. That's even more like time travel. It's like you remember being on the set that day. You remember how shitty the catering was. You remember, this person that you had a argument with the day before, and everybody's smiling now, but so you puts you right back into like the actual physical like the process of making the movie. So that's very interesting. And when I made The Woman, I was very, very angry. It's a very angry movie. I think you can feel that when you watch the movie. But that's all good. It's like, it's good to go back and look at that stuff and look at how I was directing back then, and how different I direct now as a result of the learning experience of making that movie. And sometimes you go back and watch that stuff and you're reminded of an approach you had that was way easier than this convoluted way you think you've evolved to. It's like, oh no, it was actually really simple. It's like, just be excited about the idea, be very clear and simple, and do the work. Don't overcomplicate things. So it's all good ultimately.
Yeah,
It's a strange thing to be able to study yourself, at key moments in your life. There's something wonderful about that, and there's also something like horribly depressing about it.
No, and actually, speaking of that work, and this question is also, from myself as a filmmaker, and I'm sure other filmmakers might have this, but COVID-19's shut down a lot of film productions, film festivals, you name it. I mean, but how have you, or what advice do you have for filmmakers to stay creative during this time? Because I know for me, I tried writing something.
That's the advice. Stay creative. Like I've used this time. I mean, we've been locked down since March, so March, April, May, June, July. We're almost 4.5, 5 months of largely being at home, only going out for essential things. So I've used that time. It took me a month or two to kind of get oriented to this new way of life that we have to live, which is totally necessary, by the way. I mean, I wish more people would just stay home and take this seriously. But something clicked at a certain point, and a friend had called me and reminded me of an old project that's a longtime passion project of mine. And it's a type of project that I've been so precious about that it kept getting pushed to the side, so I could go chase jobs or this or that or something that I thought would probably be an easier sell. I've kind of used this space of time to concentrate on that, something that it's one of those, one of my most precious stories, something I've wanted to make forever. So I just sat down and I'm working on that in a very, very thorough way. Usually it's about, whenever you're working in the movies, sometimes things can move really fast and people want that next draft. They want the revisions. They want to talk about schedule. They want to do all this stuff, but it's like, okay, since everything kind of slowed down to a crawl, it's like I can kind of take the time that I've always wanted to take with this and do it at a pace that's kind of leisurely compared to how I usually work. But it's been really rewarding. So, I mean, my biggest advice would be, really focus on what you want to say, how you want to say it, and create, since we can't be out and about in the world, and filmmaking requires being out and about in the world, is sit down and really, really, create the building blocks for how you're going to do that. And another advantage, another thing, an advantage that crew members and filmmakers and everybody, the sooner they get their head wrapped around that the world has changed and that we're going to have to approach things differently, the people that figure out the most effective and safest way to do that are going to have a huge advantage over everybody else. So, I have a friend that's a gaffer in New York, and he's learning how to program, LED lights, these big like light panel boards and stuff like that. And, he's learning skills that are actually going to be very valuable to productions because he's adapting, he's evolving with the way the world is changing. And that's important to do, I don't know. I'm kind of talking all over the map here. But,
no, that's good. Pretty much the main advice is to, use this time wisely, learn a new skill. I've kind of learned that a little bit as well, just setting up this home studio.
You've crewed, you've gone out, I mean, that's brave,
well, with a face shield and a mask, so, but I have been out to a production, but yeah, it is a whole new world out there, man. Yeah. So we'll see how the industry bounces back. But I want to thank you, Lucky, for your time, and it's always great, talking to other filmmakers. And I really hope whatever the next movie you have, you'll share it here with us at the El Paso Film Festival.
It might be animation at this point if we have to stay holed up for too many more years.
There's nothing wrong with animation. I love animation.
Films, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so
Okay.
much for joining us. And of course, don't forget, if you want to check out Lucky's work, The Woman is now available on Blu-ray, the 4K restoration. And Kindred Spirits and The Man Who Killed Hitler and then Bigfoot are also available on, I believe, iTunes, YouTube.
All of those,
all
are
the
available
platforms
on
that you can find them on.
iTunes
Google Play.
or Blu-rays if you're into Blu-rays and stuff like that.
Yeah, so all you filmmakers, brush up on your indie filmmaking and check out these great movies. So thank you so much, Lucky, for joining us today.
Thanks, man.
All right, guys, that's it for this episode. Tune in next time, and we'll have more filmmaker interviews. Thank you so much.
You're a lifesaver. You know that, Bill? How are things at school, kiddo?
What kind of cookie do you want?
I want a little man.
It's kind of nice when it's quiet like this. Have you fed the dogs yet? Okay, everybody. Who wants to go down to the cellar with me?
What's Dad doing?
You'll see. This is our project. And it's a secret. God only knows where she's been living.
What are we gonna do with her?
We're gonna help her. Civilize her. Free her from her baser instincts.
What?
So I need to make sure that you understand just who is in charge here. Ground rules. No touching. I learned the hard way that our friend here likes to bite.
I've observed some distressing behavior.
Have you lost your mind? She is a human being.
This woman thinks that she is an animal. It isn't right.
Do you know what would happen to all of us if you got caught?
I can't! I can't! That is not civilized behavior.
Are you sure you're not overextending?
Have you ever known me to let things get out of hand?